It was fine. I should probably point out that I never read the books and really kind of hate the games, although I don't know how much that has to do with the fan base. If I see another vacuous downward thrust video about something amazing The Witcher did, I might just run into a combine harvester. My biggest problems with the Witcher games was always that it was just a season of television that reluctantly had a game attached to it. A bad game. This fixes that major issue by getting rid of that. We can just drop all pretenses and give us a TV show. Fantasy being the big thing right now, makes sense that they would try something like this. I actually like Henry Cavill in this role much better than his role as Superman. I don't know if it's just because he got better direction than in Man of Steel, but despite the stereotype of Witchers being cold and emotionless, he comes across as a lot more emotional in this than the Snyderverse. The acting on the whole is actually pretty good. I like the girl that played Cirilla? Siri? Whatever. The most, I think. I don't know, I just found her the most entertaining to watch. I didn't much care for the Bard character. I thought he was a little annoying. You want to know the funniest part of this show? Halfway through the first episode, I remembered a new episode of that Harley Quinn show came out. I paused it and watched that.
Look, I need some help with a patient.
Oh, then sure, shoot. I'm gonna take a guess that the picture is talking to you.
Tell her yes, but to stay out of it because we are making progress.
The picture says stay out of it because it's making progress.
That was the funniest part of this show. Not too heavy on the comedy. The action ranged from good, I guess, to they were running out of time. At best, they nailed the idea of Witcher fighting being almost like dancing. One thing you didn't see me do when I was talking about the games was I never criticized the fighting style for being kind of ridiculous and unrealistic because I was aware of what they were trying to do, so, criticizing that is kind of a red herring. It's unrealistic. Yeah, it's not meant to be. At worst, the fighting looks a bit utilitarian, though. A lot of quick cuts, which I don't tend to mind as much as other people. Sometimes time is a factor, or money, or other considerations that I don't know. I tend to be forgiving about this kind of thing. The effects are what you would expect with a TV show of this budget. So, like on the level of The Expanse. I should review The Expanse. I've actually read those books. Anyway, the effects are good. Not much else to say on that. You can tell that by the trailer. I heard some people had problems with the timeline, but I felt it was fairly straightforward. Although I seem to have the superhuman ability to notice the fucking obvious. Slight aside here, but after the Rise of Skywalker video, I went and watched a few reviews, and I was surprised by how often I saw this brought up.
Results in a near complete destruction of theme for this Star Wars trilogy. There's this incoherent message now of the past is so great, pay so much respect to it. The past must die, it's awful, it's horrible, move past it.
I'm not going to respond to that directly, because Luke did.
Amazing. Every word of what you just said was wrong. The rebellion is reborn today. The war is just beginning. And I will not be the last Jedi.
Luke completely refuted the point of let the past die by his actions and his words. They flat out tell you this sort of thing. So I thought that was fairly obvious, but I'm seeing a lot of people take The Last Jedi as if that was the theme. And the ubiquity of this comment about The Last Jedi made me question, as I guess Steven Pinker would put it, my curse of knowledge. How much of what I know isn't immediately obvious to other people? Do I just have a better understanding of storytelling than the average person? I don't think so, but comments like this make me wonder. The hero flat out told you the theme, and a lot of people don't seem to get it. Or was a blue guy handing out cowboy hats on the opening weekend of The Last Jedi? I don't know. Who is that a reference for? Relating back to The Witcher, I didn't find the timeline hard to follow. I, however, might be a horrible judge of that. I don't know. Let me know if you had problems with it. Maybe I can get better at explaining myself by trying to explain it to another person. I'm still not the biggest fan of the setting, though. First off, Geralt is a not-quite-human monster hunter who is hated and feared by the people he protects, whose main love interest is a black-haired woman of uncommon beauty who has elven ancestry. It's not the most original story ever. The grandfather of modern fantasy deliberately didn't make that guy the protagonist, so it feels somewhat derivative to go back to that for me. For the record, this is older than Lord of the Rings. Aragorn and Geralt are both based off of older myths. Beowulf, Cuchulainn, Gilgamesh, that sort of thing. It's just that Aragorn is used in a different way, a little bit more unique than Geralt, not the protagonist. Although this might be somewhat a problem with the fan base too. It's not an issue that it's derivative, it's just that it's being touted as some big evolution, and it's really not. Not that that's a bad thing. I think more people should shoot for average, and it hits that mark, I guess. The setting does seem to have somewhat of an arrested development, though. Moving forward from it seems like they're trying to come across as an evolution of the Aragorn story. It seems enamored with seeming grown up, and because of that comes across as fairly childish. As C.S. Lewis once said, to be concerned about being grown up, to admire the grown-up because it is grown-up, to blush at suspicion of being childish, these things are the marks of childhood and adolescence. Although I guess there's some fun in the setting still. It's like if a 15-year-old metalhead wrote Lord of the Rings. After all, to finish that C.S. Lewis quote, "When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness, and the desire to be very grown up." Although I do have to say, I don't tend to care for a lot of grim, dark fantasy. You know, the ones that are trying to be super realistic. The problem with reality being it's mostly mundane. Everyone in this story seems to come from some sort of depressing backstory. Nobody is just Bob from down the street. Bob's a good dude. That and running into monsters feels like it should be Tuesday to a lot of people, but it's treated like huge events, and nobody seems to know anything about these sorts of things. I have a hard time believing that a merchant wouldn't know all about the various types of monsters along the road. I don't know, the world building to me feels like, the best way to put this is it's the difference between a house and a home. People inhabit this world, but nobody feels like they live here. It's a decent ride, I guess. Even most of the things that I didn't like are just things I don't like. I can see where it was going, and it does that fairly well. Not everything needs to be some sort of masterpiece, and the show is good. On a scale of 1 to 2, 2. It's the second best fantasy show I saw last week.
The Jammers!
When a tale is so great that it is passed down through the centuries, we call it a legend. The story we're about to hear is not that great. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad story, it has chickens in it. It's just not great.